Bonjour! And today we're covering the passive voice in French. It's a quick overview of the passive voice today because you'll notice that forming it is really not that hard, quite the opposite. It's actually pretty easy. However, the challenge lies in the situations where the English language uses the passive voice. That's why it wouldn't be a bad idea. It wouldn't be such a bad idea to watch this video till the end, so that you can grasp that content and integrate it into your grammar that is already pretty solid, I assume, if you've been watching these videos from the beginning. So, are you ready? Can we start? I hope we can. Let's start. The passive voice in French. That means that we're going to divide this lesson in 4 parts. What is the passive voice? What does it mean? How to construct the passive voice, how to form it, and then the use, in what situations we can use it. And you're going to see that this point is very, very, very easy. But there are also many exceptions to that very easy point. So that's the French language in a nutshell. It's very, very attractive at first, but then, it takes from you. Interesting. Enough dilly-dallying. Now we're going to tap into that definition. And I talk like we're going to tap into a taco or something, but it's actually not food that we're doing today. It's grammar, which is a food for the soul. It's nurturing as well. A sentence in which the subject is not the one doing the action. That is the definition of the passive voice. But the subject becomes the direct or indirect object complement instead. The passive voice reverses everything, turns everything on its head, which is why you really want to understand what does what, who does what in a sentence. Now, point B, how to form that passive voice in French. You're going to need the verb être and a past participle. Let's take 2 examples. He was observed all evening. Il a été observé toute la soirée. Il is not doing the action. Il is not observing anybody. He's being observed. Il a été observé. And for that reason, you see that although we're using here a passé composé of the indicative mode in French, we have something that doesn't work, in that the subject is not the one performing the action, is being observed. And that's the sign of the passive voice. This is how you recognize it now. Another example here. You were appreciated by the community. Vous étiez apprécié, and here we're going to picture we're talking to several women. This is why here the past participle agrees with the idea of several women in front of the subject. Vous étiez apprécié par la communauté. That means the women in front of you, to whom you're talking, well, they were not the one performing the action. They were not the one appreciating anything. They were just being appreciated by the community. And that tells you that it is a passive voice. So in English, it's very, 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 very similar up to this point, so shouldn't be too hard. But there are exceptions in French, and this is where it gets interesting. But right before that, let's cover the use of the passive voice in French. And it is when the subject is receiving the action. Let's take an example, a common example of things that happen in life. He is being chased by a 3-headed giraffe. Il est poursuivi par une girafe à 3 têtes. The subject is receiving the action. It's a 3-headed giraffe chasing the subject. Intransitive verbs don't work in the passive voice. For example, il surfe. He's surfing. You know that guy, surfing. Well, il est surfé. Let's imagine there was another sentence and I wanted to make this little bit of sentence into a negative, a passive sentence. It wouldn't work. You cannot be surfed. So pay attention to the kind of verb you're dealing with here. So transitive verbs take a direct object. This is a difference between transitive and intransitive, because there's like a transition. You can imagine. Je mange une girafe à 3 têtes. I'm eating a 3-headed giraffe. Well, transition. There's a transition from what I am doing in this example and the object. I'm eating what? A 3-headed giraffe. So manger in that case is a transitive version of the verb. But the same verb has also an intransitive version, intransitive equivalent, in that it doesn't take an object. You know, that's the definition here. Intransitive verbs don't take a direct object. Je mange. And je mange, you cannot put that in the passive voice. So that was the first example. Moving on with the second one of when the passive voice is different as it compares from English to French. When the unexpressed agent that does the action is a person, the sentence structure changes. Les animaux sont mangés par le monsieur is not nearly as French as when you say le monsieur mange les animaux or le monsieur les mange, depending on how you want to formulate the sentence. Pay attention to that. Of course, there will be an exercise of this video to check if you can apply that with real life exercises, because this theory is worthless if you don't apply this theory in practice. This is why I pay special attention to always provide an exercise at the end of this video. And moving on with the theory now. When the indefinite pronoun on is used. We're going to cover that in a quick example here. With this young lady interacting with a robot, on m'a répondu rapidement is the kind of passive voice that you want to formulate. So on, the indefinite pronoun on, is a way to form the passive voice in French as well. Very common. Finally, in general statements, the passive subject of reflexive verbs becomes active. Let's have a look at this example here. And I really wish I had like that red key on my keyboard, but not necessarily with weekly written on it, but just like anything, like, you know, like pizza, like the pizza key on my keyboard is missing. Maybe it is present on yours. I would be very interested to see a picture if it were, and how you managed to connect that key with an app that got Uber Eats to your door just by the press of a button. But this is probably happening somewhere in the world. Maybe you are the person who designed that very key, that system, selling it online for a price. I'd be interested to know. Cela est fait chaque semaine. It's not nearly as French as saying cela se fait chaque semaine. It is done every week. But in English, you would have it is done every week. It is performed every week. It is executed every week. In French, you're going to prefer the reflexive version of the verb to do, to make, in order to make that sentence French. It is done every week. Cela se fait chaque semaine.
And we're going to wrap it up now.
Today, we learned what the passive voice was. It's a sentence in which the subject is not the one doing the action, but becomes the direct or indirect object complement instead. In short, the subject is receiving the action. The construction is easy. You need the to be verb and a past participle. That, of course, is going to agree in gender and number with the subject. The use is interesting as well. We already covered that many times. I'm saying it again. The subject is receiving the action, like he's being chased by a three-headed giraffe. He's receiving the action of being chased. The guy is not chasing the giraffe. The exceptions are intransitive verbs don't work in the passive voice. Not at all. So you need to pay attention between the difference between transitive and intransitive. Intransitive verbs don't take a direct object. And when the unexpressed agent that does the action is a person, the sentence structure changes. Les animaux sont mangés par le monsieur. We're going to prefer le monsieur les mange in French. Or the indefinite pronoun on is used. J'ai été répondu rapidement. No. Répondre doesn't work in the passive voice like that. We need to use the on pronoun. And in general statements, the passive subject of reflexive verbs becomes active. Cela se fait chaque semaine. So it is like a general statement, and that means that in that sense, we're going to prefer the reflexive version of the verb to make to translate that sentence that would have been otherwise passive in English. Thank you for watching this video till the end, but don't go just yet, because it's an exercise. I really would appreciate that you did the exercise. These exercises are done for a reason, is for you to make sure to implement these strategies in your French now, not in like a week or a month or a year, or when the planet Earth is not even like in the galaxy. Maybe sometime it will like transform to something else. It will actually, and chances of that are 100%, which is a bit scary. But in the meantime, there are things to do on this planet, including learning French. The link is below the video. I really appreciate when you do the exercise, because it helps me make me feel useful. Otherwise, I'm just a guy who's like entertaining you for a few minutes and not really changing anything in your life. That's not the point. The point, the goal, the objective is to get you speaking French and well. Thank you for watching this video, and bye for now.